Welcome back to Sports Extra with me, Ahmad Bin Tahir. Time now to move on to our football segment. That is, of course, regarding the Euro. Now, we've got some stunners that took place. Belgium knocked out defending champions Portugal 1-0, who are now out of contention of the Euros. Belgium now move on to the quarters, and now we also know that Denmark also was there up against Wales and so many other games. Italy once again achieved victory with Roberto Mancini giving them their record victory as the Italian international side. So much happening on the Euro, so much uncertainty prevailing. We've got England up against Germany as well, so many games coming up to decide the final quarter-final lineup. Time now to discuss this further. We've been joined on Sports Extra by football analyst Mr. Ahmad Bin Tahir. Ahmad, assalamu alaikum, welcome to Sports Extra. Right, Ahmad, what is your update and your expert opinion right now on the round of 16 that is taking place? Certainly people are in shock that Ronaldo and his team have been knocked out, but obviously Belgium played really well.
I think there's not much to be shocked about, to be honest. In 2016, Belgium were third position in the World Cup. They're obviously an excellent team. They have some of the best players in the world right now. Kevin De Bruyne is in form. Lukaku is in form right now. Portugal, on the other hand, have looked shaky all season throughout the Euros. The amount of goals that they scored is not ideal, and a lot of the contributions came from Cristiano Ronaldo himself. But the rest of the team, apart from someone like Renato Santos, there was very little creativity. So I think that it was a very, even though to some people it's an upset, to especially the Ronaldo fans and all around the world it's an upset, but I think it was a very expected result. Belgium, people might say that Belgium were the underdogs or Belgium were perhaps not the better team in this match, but I would tend to disagree. I think that the tactical plan was executed really, really well. I think that at a couple of occasions they were a little lucky as well, but obviously in such tournaments and knockout matches where 90 minutes can decide whether you continue or not, and 90 minutes can separate really good teams against really bad teams. I think that in such a scenario it was pretty predictable.
Right, Ahmed, 23 shots, 58% possession and 88% of pass accuracy. People would believe Portugal really played well. So do we owe it to Belgium's stellar defense? Do we say that they were impregnable, or do we believe that it was just not Portugal's night?
One of the things was that Belgium were a little lucky. That is true, but I don't think it was Portugal's night by any manner. Right? The thing is that as soon as Kevin De Bruyne went off injured, Belgium lost a lot of their rhythm from the midfield, right? And that is where they lost a lot of control, and they tried to counter it as well. But throughout the second half, Martinez, his overall strategy was to park the bus, to keep the defense as low, as deep as possible, and to defend therefore. I think that this worked out really well for them. Irrespective of the fact that Portugal had so many shots, it was very difficult for them to break the lines, right? We saw Bruno Fernandes was completely neutralized. We saw players like Jota were so poor in their finishing and were actually not getting enough chances. Cristiano Ronaldo did not get a single clear chance throughout the match, apart from a couple of very difficult free kicks. So I think it's more important to consider that Belgium were really, really good defensively, although I think that a lot was left wanting in their midfield as well. I think they could have certainly done better after Kevin De Bruyne departed, but overall it was a very deserved victory.
Overall, very deserved victory, we must say that, and definitely we know that Belgium is now going to be facing Italy. And talking about Italy, Ahmed, they overcame Austria. But that shouldn't be the fact, because the fact should be that Roberto Mancini has been able to extract so much from this Italian team. What has he done differently that has made them go towards probably their best run so far in international competitions?
So to be honest, Italy crashed out of they didn't even qualify for the 2018 World Cup, and after that he took over and transformed the team in so many forms. So I think that one of the things he did really, really well was to employ a very, very fluid midfield. You can see that there is this trio of Verratti, Barella and Jorginho, and then sometimes Locatelli also comes, and Locatelli was really good for them this year as well, especially in the Euros. So I think the midfield has been the key for Italy this year. They've passed around really well, they've dictated gameplay in whichever match they've played, and the transition from the defense to the attack has been very fluid. You see, this is the problem we see in teams like England and in teams like Croatia, and especially in France nowadays. This is also a huge problem, that the midfield is failing to transition very quickly or good enough from the defense defense to the attack. But Italy do that really well. You have Jorginho who gets the ball, who distributes it beautifully, right? And then you have players like Verratti and Barella who just dribble or who plays excellent diagonal passes across to Insigne, or and especially players like Spinazzola who are actually defenders. Spinazzola is a defender and he comes across to the left-hand side, and there's an overload to the left-hand side of Insigne, Verratti, and Spinazzola. So I think that what Italy have done is that they've overcome the one weakness that is plaguing a lot of teams right now across the world, which is basically having a fluid midfield. That is the one thing, single most important thing that Mancini has worked over, which has allowed his attackers like Immobile and Insigne to really get forward, to run into spaces without a lot of fear of having to track back very quickly.
Do you think that strategy is now going to work against Belgium? Because nevertheless, Belgium are going to be very high on morale, and they've got a good encounter as far as the quarters are concerned. A very interesting quarterfinal that we've got coming up with them versus Italy.
It is a very interesting quarterfinal, but one thing that is going to be really important is going to be whether Kevin De Bruyne and Eden Hazard are fit or injured, right? Both of them went off injured in this match against Portugal, and there's a lot of concern over how long this injury is. So it really depends on whether they come back. If Kevin De Bruyne does not come back, then I don't see Belgium winning the match. The reason is that their midfield looks lost without him, and I think that with players like Verratti, Barella, and Jorginho, it's going to be very, very easy for Italy to dominate if Kevin De Bruyne does not come back. Same goes for Eden Hazard. Eden Hazard was really, really crucial in a lot of the good things that Belgium did last night. He attracted a lot of defenders towards himself. He created spaces for Thorgan Hazard to run into and for Lukaku to run into. So all of that is going to be really important considering. At the same time, I think that regardless of Hazard or KDB, Belgium still have some like wild cards. Like they have someone like Lukaku who can really bully defenders. Like I saw him last night and he was shrugging off Diaz like he was made out of paper, right? So I think that Lukaku is going to be a huge boost for, especially his form is going to be a huge boost for Belgium as an overall. But I think that Italy are the favorites considering that they haven't lost any of their important players to injury, and that almost all of their players are so well informed. Like they can literally, even if they're blocked out in defense or in attack, they can literally bring on someone like Locatelli or Chiesa. Right. There's so much quality on the bench. They can bring them up, and that's it for the other team.
Well, the Croatians are up against Spain now, and it's very interesting that the last time these two met was a competition during the UEFA Nations League, while the Croatians won most of the recent time these two teams faced, but they still have those haunting memories of losing 6-0 to them in September 18, which is still the heaviest margin of defeat in international football. Do you think that's going to be playing on their minds, or do you think that they have enough to overcome Spain?
I don't think that's going to be playing on their mind. It was a long time ago. It's 2021 now. The team has developed a lot, to be really honest. Modric has probably become their best player. So I mean, he was their best player previously as well, but he's matured into a much different player now. If you have seen the game against England, he was practically playing as a centre forward instead of a centre midfielder. Similarly, players like Kovacic and Brozovic have developed a lot. Kovacic literally won the Champions League with Chelsea, and he developed into a much better player. So I think it's a much more mature team. It's a much more balanced team at this point. At the same time, it's going to be a very tricky matchup against Spain. Spain, on the other hand, have had their finishing problems, right? Players like Morata and Gerard Moreno, their two strikers, have a lot of easy chances, and if they continue to do so against Croatia today as well, I don't think that they stand a chance. But they need to improve on their finishing. But I think Spain will get their chances, and Spain will be the favourites for tonight's match.
Definitely. Moving on to another big crucial game that we've got is England up against Germany. It's the third meeting between them at the European Championship. Germany won 6-5 on penalties following a 1-all draw in the 96 semi-final before England drew 1-0 in the group stages. Now, it's the 13th meeting between them at Wembley, and we know that Wembley has been really successful for England because they've won about 4 of the first 5 games, including the 1966 World Cup, but that was way back. Now, considering how England have been trying to regain form, but Germany is coming up with something to prove as well. How do you rate the game between these two sides?
I think this is the most exciting game of the round of 16. I would say it's going to be even better than Belgium versus Portugal. And Belgium versus Portugal was very entertaining. The reason I say that is because both of these teams are very balanced, right? And they're on very similar standing right now. Neither of them have players who have performed exceptionally well throughout the tournament. I mean, yeah, Kai Havertz has performed well for Germany, and Sterling has scored a couple of goals for England. But neither of these teams are in their best form and are not necessarily bad either. So I think that more than an individual masterclass, this is going to be a tactical battle between the two managers. And Joachim Low, he seems like a more astute manager to me, but you never know what Gareth Southgate might come up with. So I think it's going to be a very, very close tactical battle between these two teams.
Who do you rate out of these two, Ahmed? Who do you think has the better hand and you believe that might or you want to see make it to the quarters?
I personally am supporting Germany because I love a couple of players there. But I think that this is a very unpredictable match, and it really, really depends on how the managers go with it. Because you see, Southgate has been very inconsistent in what kind of a team he fields and how he manages his tactics. Sometimes he would play two central defenders. Sometimes he would play only one. I think that if he gets his tactics right, then England have a really good chance. But the reason is that Germany have been very inconsistent. England, for all of their problems, have been relatively consistent, have won their matches or at least drawn them. They haven't lost any. They haven't conceded any goals so far, so they have had a solid defense. So if Southgate gets his tactics right and if England play a very calm and composed game, especially given that the match is at Wembley, there's going to be a lot of home support there. So I think that England are the favourites to go through. Germany are very shaky, to be really honest. They won their match against Portugal in a grand manner, but apart from that, their matches in Group F were really, really poor. They drew 2-2 against Hungary, and it was a very, very difficult draw for them. It was an 87th minute lucky goal by Goretzka that helped them get through to the round of 16. So if they go with the same strategy as before, I think it's going to be difficult for them to beat England. But you never know. Lowe is always a very experienced manager, 15 years managing England. So he might come up with something really different. You never know. But I'm supporting and I'm having England as my favorites.
Oh, really, really diplomatic there. Favorite Germany and there England at the same time. I understand you want to balance it out. But now moving on to another last encounter that we have, and that is France up against Switzerland. Now you got to understand that France have only lost one of their last 17 matches at the Euro and the World Cup combined. We have also rated this as probably one of the best friend sides we've seen in recent football history. The form that they've been enjoying and the names that they have, definitely Switzerland against them looks very bleak, but you never know in football. But that being said, you believe that France is going to ace this encounter, and when they come up to the quarters, they're going to be the team that everybody must look to beat.
Yeah, that is true. France are favorites to win this match. But I kind of disagree with the way that Didier Deschamps, their manager, has set up his team in Euros. Before Euros, France was a much better team, to be honest. Giroud was playing as a striker instead of Benzema, and because of him, both Mbappe and Griezmann were flourishing in the attack. Pogba has always been good for France. Kante has always been good for France. But I think that removing Giroud and adding Benzema to the lineup has been very detrimental to their old style of play. And now they're relying a lot on counter-attacks. They're not controlling the game anymore. So we saw a huge upset in Netherlands, Czech Republic, how the Czech Republic just countered twice and boom, 2 goals. And that's all it requires in a 90-minute match, to be honest. It's not a two-legged match. You can't make up for your mistakes in another match later on. You lose, you're out, right? So I think that anything can happen this match, but if France try to control the game, which they should, then they can win. But at the moment, the way that they played their previous matches, it sounds like it's going to be a counter-attacking game with Mbappe's pace being used and Benzema's quality being used. Regardless of that, in the quarterfinals, France will obviously be the favorites France are obviously the favorites of the entire tournament. But I think that they're likely to make it to the semis, to say the very least, because of the individual quality that they possess. With teams like France, the unique thing is teams like France, Germany, Belgium, Italy. The thing with these teams is that there's so much individual quality and there's so much experience within those players that they somehow find a way to score a goal or they somehow find a way to win a match, right? Sometimes it doesn't happen. For Portugal, it didn't happen, but sometimes it does. So I would say that France are certainly favorites to win the tournament as a whole, but you never know.
You never know, definitely. Ahmad Bin Tahir, football expert, thank you so much for joining us on Sports Extra. It's been really great and insightful talking to you. Now, definitely the Euros are bringing up some crucial encounters, be it England up against Germany. Probably, like he said, one of the most crucial encounters there. England playing at Wembley. They've got to win. Otherwise, Germany, a top force in the European football as well. But you never know how the games would rate off. Then we've got Spain as well in action. And then, of course, France up against Switzerland. All in action. And definitely the quarter-final lineup is almost about to be completed of the Euros as well. At that note, we'll see you tomorrow once again from me and the entire team of Sports Extra. It's goodbye for now.